family business went broke.
Right.
I went from being worth £1 million at age 25.
Okay.
Made a lot of money, had a lot of fun. At 14, I bought a pinball machine. I was one of the first people in the UK to own one of the big upright Space Invader machines.
That's amazing.
And my big business breakthrough, I've become the youngest person in the UK to be granted a liquor and entertainment licence.
Wow.
So owing £1 million at age 29, home was repossessed, car was repossessed. My wife couldn't take the stress of it all, so she disappeared.
How did you deal with that?
The big eye-opener for me is that there are principles in life that govern the process of creation and success. Principles such as the law of cause and effect, for instance. We can trace that train of cause and effect back to our thoughts. As ye think, so you become. So I become very interested in techniques for positive thinking and self-motivation, and in particular goal setting.
If you were distilling down some of that wisdom in terms of the success principles, how would you explain them?
There are 7 that I use as a framework to form a philosophy.
Okay.
The first one, raise awareness. Whether that's a business environment, whether it's the online environment, the more you raise your awareness of others, the more you can find harmony with others, and from the harmonies come in synergy.
Great insight. Oh, I've not heard it put that way before.
Principle number 3 is to find balance. How much balance do you think you have right now mentally between creative mind and logical mind? It's the combination of words for the conscious mind and imagery for the subconscious mind that starts the formation of new brain cell connections. There's quite a lot of neuroscience.
This is where strategy is so important, because I think unless you get really clear on the ask and the vision, your brain can't even help you out. Of the 7 that you just listed, which one do you think is the one that people struggle with the most? Oh, right. What do people get wrong about goal setting?
It's important to write the goal in the form of affirmation.
Yeah.
There's a whole science in how you write affirmation. The 3 important keys are...
That's powerful.
And the reason why trainers recommended the mind-numbing repetition is because
language is just so powerful.
Things we say to ourselves influence an inner paradigm that we carry. In psychology, it's called...
One of the biggest challenges I see with personal development is most people talk outside in, not inside out.
That identity is the command to the subconscious.
What would you say to sort of a business owner or CEO who feels like they've set goals in the past and nothing's really changed?
They haven't had the right goal setting formula.
Okay.
There are 7 steps in the goal mapping system. The first step is...
Yeah, you're spot on with that.
People are prepared to pay the price if the promise is clear.
Love that. Well, welcome along to today's episode of the Grown Up Business Podcast. This is kind of a bit of an amazing episode for me, because I'm going to get to have a conversation with somebody that I saw on stage probably close on 30 years ago, which is kind of amazing. So this is kind of like I'm excited for this conversation. If you are an entrepreneur, business owner, if you are a founder or CEO and you are looking to achieve more and want to grow your business but also achieve your goals, then this episode is 100% for you. So my guest today is the creator of an amazing system called goal mapping. But what's interesting is Brian used to run a family business that failed during the recession in 1980s, when you lost everything. He lost his income, his home, his marriage, and he was 29 years old, or 29 years young, I would suggest. Anyway, but ended up over £1 million in debt, and was at that point in your career, which I didn't realize, you were unable to read and write, which is amazing. But from that setback, I think sometimes a setback is often a setup, right? And you turned it around. You've become incredibly successful, built a global business all around goal mapping and this concept of goal mapping. Now you teach people goal mapping, life mapping, action mapping. Your 4 books have been translated into 17 different languages. which is incredible. You've shared the stage with the likes of Tony Robbins, Brennan Burchard, John Gray, T. Harv Eker, and you'll also be sharing the stage with me at Scale Up Summit, but that's for a later conversation. And you've worked with companies like Microsoft, Siemens, Disney, Coca-Cola, and you have a goal and a mission to really help lift 7 million lives up to higher levels of achievement for around the world. So welcome, Brian, to the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here.
So, I mean, that's a heck of a story, right? And we were just talking before we came on air that you were saying it doesn't feel like that much of a story because you sort of told it so many times. But do you ever go back and look at how, like, do you remember those days when that happened? Do you still think about that at all? Or
yeah, I remember it really well. And when I first started teaching personal development, it was quite fresh, quite raw.
right.
And I was deeply embarrassed about my past, my background. So I kept it a secret for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, when I started working with big corporations, I thought if they found out the truth, that I have no qualifications and couldn't read or write until I was 30, then they're going to show me the door. So I better not say too much.
So okay, amazing. How did you get into personal development? Talk to me about that part.
The family business went broke.
Right.
The background is I grew up in a traveling funfair family.
Okay.
On both sides of my family, on my mother and my father's side, I'm related to the two oldest circus families.
Right.
So on my mother's side, Smart Circus and my cousins, and on my father's side, Chipperfield Circus.
Okay.
And my ancestors broke away. One of my favourite fun fairs to come to would be Newbury Fun Fair, not far from where we are today.
Yeah.
The year I was born, my father decided that way of life as a business
Right.
was starting to die.
Okay.
Years ago, when the travelling fair come to town, it was a really big deal.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal anymore.
No.
Because people have got home entertainment. Sky, they've got cable, they're surfing the net, they're playing Xbox in their bedroom. They're not so bothered if the small travelling fair has come to town or not. And so in the 1960s and 70s, a pattern took place where a lot of the travelling funfair people that could see the change happening, they got out, and what most of them did was move to the seaside. So if you look around the coast of the UK, you'll find about 95% of all the amusements, all the fun parks, bingos, gift shops, arcades, they're all owned by ex-funfair people.
Okay.
Spread all around the country. And my father saw an opportunity on the Isle of Wight, south side of the island, a little place called Ventnor, old sort of Victorian seaside town.
Right.
And he took his amusements there and opened up for the tourist trade. But he couldn't quite bring himself to walk away from the family sort of background, because if you're born into that life, the travelling funfair life, it's a very insular community.
Right.
And it's difficult just to walk away from that. It's your sort of family and your friends and your community.
Yeah.
And so the pattern I grew up with from the year I was born onwards is I had 3 different homes each year. One travelling on the fun fairs, which was about 4 months each year.
Right.
One at the seaside while we opened up for the tourist industry, and that was for 4 months each year.
Okay.
And then we had a winter base not far from Heathrow Airport. Park up for the cold weather months, do all the maintenance work, and then the pattern would repeat. And so growing up, I always had 3 homes, 3 sets of friends, and 2 or more different schools each year. No school where we travelled. So I only went to school for about 5 months each year, but that was divided between different schools.
Wow.
Never sat an exam in my life. And to this day, have no formal qualifications. I've won awards for my work, both here and internationally, but I've never sat any exams. I left school just before I was 13. No qualifications and unable to read and write. Partly not being able to read and write was because of my lifestyle, but mostly it's because of dyslexia.
Right. You and I share that.
Yeah. And my brother had exactly the same experience as me. My sister also. They both become good scholars. My parents paid for me to have a private tutor would come to the caravan to work with me, but I just couldn't get it.
Right.
I don't think it would have been any different if I'd have stayed in one school the whole year. It seems strange to a lot of people to leave school at 13, but on the fun fairs at that time, it was normal.
Right.
All of my friends left school at 13. All of my cousins, everyone I knew left school at 13, my brother, my sister. And the reason is, if you're growing up in that life, there is no career opportunities.
Right.
It's a self-employed existence.
Right.
And so you become an early entrepreneur. You're given a stake in the family business. So my 13th birthday present was a rocket-shaped bubblegum machine. And my father taught me about business. And
I love that.
yeah, so it's changed a little bit now, but not much.
Right.
Most people are going to go and work back in the business. If there's not a career opportunity, you don't really see the value in qualifications because you're not going to go and apply for a job.
Yeah.
It's much more about learning about business and learning about how to be an entrepreneur and operate as a self-employed person.
So what were some of the lessons that you took from that experience then in terms of around business? What did your father teach you? What were some of the lessons?
Well, he taught me the first thing when you empty the pennies out of the bubblegum machine
Right.
is that you need to buy more bubblegum. That's top
Supply,
priority.
demand. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got to have your stock. The next priority was 20% or more, which you're going to reinvest the next year
Right.
back into more equipment. So my second year in business at 14, I bought a pinball machine, Star Trek pinball machine.
Cool.
I was particularly proud of it. And my big business breakthrough at 15, I was one of the first people in the UK to own one of the big upright Space Invader machines when they first come out.
Okay.
And there used to be an exhibition with all the new machines at the Olympia in London.
Right.
And the Space Invaders, it come from Japan, I think, and it was tucked into the corner. Nobody was paying any attention to it. And because the machines were for demonstration at the exhibition, they would have a little button on the outside you could press to have a free go and try it out.
Okay.
I was addicted within 10 minutes. I was like, I've got to have one of these. And it was a lot of money. It was £1,200, which this is back in...
It's a lot of money any time, but back then it was a
back
lot.
in the 70s.
That's a lot.
And then my dad wouldn't buy it. And I managed to talk the guy who was selling them into letting me have one on post-dated checks. So I signed 3 checks.
deferred payment plan.
Yes, that was my early payment plan for after Easter.
Right.
So I knew Easter time there'd be a few quid coming in. And I remember when it was delivered, within a week it had gone wrong. And my dad was saying, I told you that machine. But the reason it had gone wrong is because the money box was full and it was jammed up through the coin mech right to the top. You couldn't fit any more money in. And then my dad was desperately trying to buy some, but there were no more in the country. And so, I did very well out of that.
So do you think you just spotted a trend, or you just spotted something that was just you were just curious about it?
Yeah, I just curious, and I trusted my own experience. I don't know it was a trend as such. And there have been a number of trends that I've been surprised by, but I certainly saw the attractiveness of that particular game. And there were some video games out before that, like the original ping pong game and some things, but Space Invaders was the first, I think,
Right.
sort of really compelling video game that come out and cornered the market.
What did you buy next then? I was curious, because is that one of those dangers where you go, oh, I've just had an absolute killer decision and I'm now looking for the same again, or what?
I bought some small tabletop versions, which I had positioned in pubs around the Isle of Wight, which is where our summertime business was, and built up quite a few machines and was doing very well with it. And then just as I was 18, my father confiscated them all.
What?
And instead, yes, he said, no,
hang on a second, that's not an 18th birthday present.
no, he took them all. Gave me 25% in the business as a share instead,
Right.
and said, go find a new outlet, because he'd done very well. He was completely illiterate, my dad. He never learnt to read and write.
Right.
He could sign his name, but that was the extent of things. And he was savvy. He understood how to do business, and his business expanded on the Isle of Wight. And he owned 4 or 5 different amusement arcades.
Right.
They were all good money earners. There were no more for sale. The government wasn't granting any new licenses. And so we needed to find a new outlet. And I looked around and I decided disco. 18. I wanted to have some fun. So amazingly, I become the youngest person in the UK to be granted a liquor and entertainment's license.
No way.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, I opened the disco really young.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Simple business plan.
Yeah, what was the plan?
Party hard.
Was it?
Yeah. Set a good example by partying myself, of course. And yeah, it was 1981, which was the crest of the new romantics wave.
Yeah. Duran Duran, Spano Band.
Right into it.
Yeah.
And I managed to talk Whitbread's Brewery into lending me £50,000. But I spent most of that on some very expensive Italian lights and a big sound system. And I had nothing left for the decor. And at the time, the club scene was very stiff.
Yeah.
Top rank type stuff. And I went completely the other way with like a crazy club. And I went to my uncle and my cousins, and they had these big warehouses at their winter base. And I took all of their old funfair and circus junk, galloper horses, candy floss kiosks,
Right.
waltzer cars, bumper cars, broken stuff, painted it up and stuck it in as the decor, and had a very alternative music and dress policy, and people just loved it. So they started coming from all over the country. They even come from abroad. You know, documentaries are made about the place. We were in all the music magazines. And lots of well-known.
You're a music entrepreneur at 18.
Yeah, I started DJing at 19 because I was having a lot of problems with hiring good DJs.
Right.
They would disappear on me because they got a better offer or more money to go to London or somewhere. And so I started doing it myself. I was already selecting the music and controlling the music policy. So it was a pretty simple step from there to learn DJing, and really fell in love with that and did that for 13 years.
That's amazing.
Made a lot of money, had a lot of fun.
So what caused the downturn? Like, why did the business go under? What was that? Was that just the economic shift, people not going out, or fundamental change in habits, do you think? Or
I know it was like a perfect storm. So there was quite a bad recession in the late 80s, early 90s. We just made an expansion, buying up other places because we were full 3 nights a week.
Right.
Didn't see the recession coming. Interest rates doubled to 15% over like a 9-month period. That was a real hard knock. But the thing that killed it was a change in habit patterns.
Right.
Late 1980s, early 90s, en masse, English people stopped taking their main summer holiday in the UK and they started going abroad. Club Med.
Yep.
My customers were some of the first to leave, early adopters.
Right.
Sort of 18 to 30.
Yeah, of course.
They all went to Ibiza. They won't come into the Isle of Wight anymore. Different island.
Yeah.
And I had to look it up. Where's Ibiza? I mean, why are they going there? Well, the sunshine's guaranteed.
Yeah.
Clubs are open all night, not just till 1 o'clock, which was the licensing law at the time. And it's the trend. Everybody's going there. They want to drink a beer in the sun, cheap flights, like nice clubs, a lot of outdoor stuff going on. By the early 90s, the young family groups, they were going abroad. Spain, Greece, Italy. And by the mid-90s, even the old age pensioners, you know, which were always coming to the Isle of Wight on a coach trip, they were off instead on a jolly with their friends to drink a glass of vino in the sun. And it became a really, really sad time.
Yep.
Lots of resorts around the UK were hit by it. The Isle of Wight was particularly badly hit because it's quite expensive to get there on the ferry.
Yes, of course.
And so if you're looking for a cheap holiday, you're not going to go to the Isle of Wight because of the ferry cost. That was as much as people getting on a plane to go to Spain.
Yeah.
And you're going to go to somewhere where you can drive. So places like Blackpool, Brighton, Bournemouth, they survived.
Yep.
But the Isle of Wight as a tourist destination really died. It became the unemployment black spot in the south of England, and the suicide rate went through the roof.
Wow.
People couldn't cope, started throwing themselves off cliffs. Hotels shut down, many of them burnt down, lovely old Victorian buildings, but people burnt them for the insurance money. Every other shop in the high street was either closed or a charity shop, and it was really awful time. It's recovered now. It's found ways to reinvent itself, but during the early 90s, it was very, very difficult time. And a lot of the old family businesses that have been there and doing well since Victorian times, suddenly they're all out of business.
Yeah.
Even those that had old money couldn't weather the storm. My family's business was one of those that went under, and it just wiped us out. I went from being worth £1 million at age 25 to owing £1 million at age 29. Home was repossessed, car was repossessed, a fast red Italian sports car. Lots of things were repossessed. My brother lost his home. My parents' home was up for repossession because my dad had that old-fashioned funfair mindset. You put everything into the business, and so he put his home up for security. They were 65 at the time, my mum and dad, so just didn't know what to do, really. I moved back into my old bedroom, waiting for the repossession people to come and take my parents' house. Signed on to income support, dole as it was known back then, first time in my life. My wife couldn't take the stress of it all, so she disappeared. And
how did you deal with that? Like
not well. The thing with the Isle of Wight is it's a small place where everyone knows everyone, and that fosters a great sense of community.
Right.
It's also somewhere there isn't much happening, and everybody loves to talk about everybody else's business.
Right.
No, I was particularly well known, and I think a lot of people probably envied the lifestyle I had.
Yeah.
And some may have even been pleased to see my demise. I don't know, but I was just embarrassed to show my face around town because I didn't want people asking me, "Where's your wife gone? Where's that beautiful car gone? Where's that big 3-story house gone?" It's just all gone. And sometimes now I struggle to think, where did it all go? Because we owned a lot of property. On paper, we were very, very wealthy. And yet with the recession, we had one piece of property was valued at 650,000, and it sold in a forced auction for 37,000.
Sorry, it was worth how much? 650.
It was valued at 650,000,
and it sold for 37.
Yeah, in the mid 80s, somewhere there, and it sold for 37,000 in a forced auction.
Yeah, that's decimation of wealth right there, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was a really tough time. I look back at it and I could see that mentally I was really struggling with depression, but I wouldn't go and get help. And I didn't want to leave my bedroom, and I just sort of hoped every day that something was going to happen, it would turn around and get better.
Right.
But of course, each day was the same. I was thinking it's going to be some mad, bad dream. I'm going to wake up. It's going to be okay. No. And I didn't know what to do. And then one day, some friends come round calling, and they asked how I was, but their real reason for coming actually was to pitch me. And they pitched me to join their direct sales team they'd started up.
Really?
Commission only.
Right.
I didn't even understand that. I was a very uneducated person, didn't go to school.
Yeah.
I thought commission sounds like commissionaire. It's some sort of some sort of position.
And you couldn't look it up because the time you couldn't read, right?
No.
So that's not fair. You couldn't look it up either.
Commission only. If you don't sell anything, you don't
get anything.
You don't eat that day. So I joined them. They convinced me I needed to do something. I needed to get out my bedroom.
Which is probably true.
Oh, yeah,
true. Completely true.
Absolutely true. And it was a blessing. I didn't enjoy it. And the truth is I wasn't any good at it. I didn't sell a sausage, not at first. I was becoming more and more depressed.
The part of direct selling is in the clue. It's the second word, right?
I do sales training these days. So I've done a lot of sales training over years. And I look back on it, it does make me laugh. I know why I didn't sell anything. I was a miserable, moaning, whining, complaining little person. And of course, people like to buy things from happy and positive
This
people.
is true. This is true. Yeah, rule 101 is if you're going to be in selling, learn to be happy, right? Learn to be at least optimistic and upbeat, right? Nobody's going to want to buy a product if you're depressed.
I was the opposite, and I want to tell people how unfair it was. Bloody government for the recession, and the tourists for choosing to go to Spain, and all the banks for not continuing with their loans.
That's hard though, isn't it? Don't you think? I think it's one of the big, and I've had a similar sort of experience to you in terms of, I ended up with what Jim Rohn used to call a blame list. Who's on your blame list? Jim used to say, and he used to say, if you've got 3 or 4 people on your blame list and you're not on it, then you've got a problem because you're not taking responsibility for where you are and what's gone on, good, bad, or indifferent. But it's hard if you're in that loop, isn't it, to see it?
I can see it. I was doing a lot of blaming, but then, to me, it was just quite right that I was blaming, because it wasn't my fault that there was a recession. It wasn't my fault that the tourists had decided to go to Spain. And, these things seemed like they were outside of my control, and I was in the habit of blame. The turning point came when I was invited to go to a personal development workshop. I say invited, but
were you dragged along?
Yeah.
Was it one of those?
I didn't want to go. I didn't know what personal development was, but I was pretty sure I didn't want it. I thought,
what's wrong with me? Why are you saying? Yeah,
it's going to be some guy at the front of the room trying to mess with my mind, some psycho babble. And my manager said, it's team workshop, Brian. I went, yeah. He said, well, if you want to stay part of the team,
oh really?
Go to the workshop. So I went with a very, very closed mind. And the great thing was the guy who was running the workshop was a really cool guy. And what was particularly cool was he made it very simple.
Right.
He'd made it very simple. Not a lot of, big words or management speak. He kept it down to earth. I could understand what he was saying. And I felt safe with him. And so quite early on, I went and fessed up about my sorry situation. And in particular, what he helped me learn was the science of positive thinking. And it became absolutely transformational in my life. He showed me how I could use positive thinking for both increasing my results, and I took my sales performance from the lowest in the team to the highest within a year.
Within a year? Wow.
But the more important thing was he showed me how I could use it to overcome my learning barriers. And within a year, I'd learned to read, and within 18 months, I learned to speed read. And he said something to me, I was so grateful to him. Sadly, he died very young. When I learned to read, I wanted to read everything, particularly big words out loud, make sure my friends can hear, look, I'm reading that big word. And the thing he said to me was, most people in their adult life take reading and writing for granted because they've been doing it a lot of years.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, and then suddenly you learn how, and I was 30 when I learned to read, it seems like a very special thing. He said, treat it in a special way. Don't read the newspaper. It's mostly bad news. If you need to be informed, watch the news on the telly. Don't waste your time with comics and magazines or anything, unless the magazine's about personal development. Read good quality personal development. And I made the decision that was all I would read. And he had a big library, so he would lend me a book. I learned to speed read, so I was reading a book a week. And I had a bunch of really important insights. I think the first one, maybe the main insight, was long-term success is never an accident.
Mm.
Whether that is long-term success in our business, or it's long-term success in our health or our wealth or our relationships, is never an accident. It's purposeful. You can have a chance momentary success. Winning the lottery is a chance success. You can't really replicate it. There isn't a formula. Even if you buy a lot of tickets, you can't guarantee it. The big eye-opener for me is that there are principles in life that govern the process of creation and success. Principles such as the law of cause and effect, for instance. The law of cause and effect says there are no accidents. Everything we experience is an effect, and there will be a specific cause. And we can trace that train of cause and effect back to our thoughts. Thought is very much the first cause. As ye think, so you become. And that was a new insight for me, because I'd grown up quite naive and thinking that success had been mostly luck. And maybe I'd had all mine because I'd had a lot of success. Maybe there was no more coming. So to realize, okay, it's principle. And if I learn these principles and if I apply these principles to my life, then ultimately it's going to help me to become successful. The thing that I also noticed in reading all the different personal development books is that most of them are saying the same thing. There's not a lot of difference when you really get down to the essence, because the way the mind works is the way the mind works. Hasn't changed much over thousands of years, and the principles of success likewise have been around for thousands of years. I think what distinguishes all of the different personal development books is the stories they tell to help communicate the principles.
True.
And the thing that I become very interested in was the techniques to apply the principles, because I started to realize actually there's a lot of people that know personal development.
Right.
I wasn't the only person that went to this workshop. A lot of people were in the workshop.
How many were there actually?
There's about 50 people in the workshop.
So.
They're hearing the same things that I'm hearing. But for me, it was a lifeline.
Right.
So I latched onto them and I hung on every word this guy said, and I applied it into my life. And people know personal development, but they're not often using it, not diligently. It's a little bit like people know it's good to take some exercise and look after yourself, but they don't go and do it. So a lot of people will buy a personal development book and it sits on their bookshelf, or they read it but they don't actually apply the principles.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So I become very interested in techniques for positive thinking, self-motivation, personal responsibility, and in particular goal setting. That become a real fascination for me, and ultimately become my big business breakthrough.
I think what's really interesting is I remember when I was offered a publishing contract by a major publisher to write a particular book, and one of the things that always sort of stuck with me and was that most personal development books or business books, they rarely get read beyond about chapter 3, which is kind of really amazing. Is that most people get to chapter 3 and then kind of like drop out or get distracted. I think there's a level of consistency, isn't there? I mean, years ago, I was told to read 20 minutes a day, like just 20 minutes a day, and it will change your life forever in ways you cannot comprehend. And I like you, before I became a coach, sort of made a commitment to go, and I learned photo reading, which was,
Yeah.
I think I might have even seen you talk about it at some point, but like that was my version of speed reading.
Yeah.
Just because I really wanted to consume an awful lot of knowledge very quickly. It was like I wanted the sort of the fast path, as it were, to try and understand some of these concepts. And I think, I mean, it'd be useful, I think, for our audience, our listeners, like just let's break down some of those. Do we break those down after we've done the goal setting, or do we talk about the success principles? Because I think most of those books, like you say, 80% after a while, you read enough of them, you start to go, this is the same thing. It might be called something different,
Yeah.
or it might be taught in a slightly different way, or it's got a different model. But fundamentally, if you're going to run a great business, the concepts haven't really changed. The tools have changed.
Yeah.
The way you do it, the things you have to overcome, the government regulation you got to deal with might change, but fundamentally, you've still got to attract a customer. You've got to solve a problem for that customer. You've got to be able to deliver a product or service for a profit, and you've got to be able to reinvest that and build a team. And the fundamentals are still the fundamentals. Jim Rohn used to talk about that. I mean, one of my favorite Jim Rohn quotes was, "Beware of the man selling new fundamentals." Right? Like there aren't any. There aren't any new. It's still the same thing, and I think that always struck with me of that. So, like, what would be if you were distilling down some of that wisdom in terms of the success principles? How would you explain them?
There are 7 that I use as a framework to form a philosophy that is the underpinning of all of the different techniques that I've developed and teach. So there are 4 main techniques I teach, but behind these 4 techniques are a set of 7 principles. And each of the principles is universal. You can apply the principle to a single moment in time or to a lifespan over many years. You can apply it to a group of people or an individual person. You can apply the principle to a specific situation that you face. So would you like me to go through the 7?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. And I think if, because we're obviously heading into the seasonal time of year. We're heading into that time of year where people are thinking about their goals for next year, what they're going to be doing, maybe the next 2 or 3 years, those kind of things. And I would like to, obviously, I want to dive into the difference between sort of goal mapping and was it the dyslexic thinking that led you to that breakthrough? Was it having the dyslexia that led you to see some of these patterns, do you think?
Yeah, possibly. I've had a bunch of very high-level CEOs over the years that suggest to me that my dyslexia has been a real gift.
I agree.
Because it's caused me to think differently.
Yeah.
So I think that may well be true. The goal mapping technique, although I'm sort of titled as the creator of it, it came in a single momentary flash of insight, driving my car at midnight. So
really,
yeah. I then had to reverse engineer what I'd seen. But the 7 principles, the first one, which I believe is the starting place of all achievement, is to raise awareness. The more we raise our awareness, the more we increase our effectiveness. If you're very aware of yourself, your habits, your behaviors, your likes, your dislikes, what motivates you or demotivates you, the more aware you are of yourself, the more you can choose to be your best when it's important, regardless of what's going on around you in your day.
Right.
The more you raise your awareness of others, their strengths, their weaknesses, their likes, dislikes, the more you can find harmony with others, and from the harmonies come in synergy. And the more you raise your awareness of your environment, whether that's a business environment, whether it's the online environment, whether it's a city environment, or recently I got lost in the wilderness out in Norway, couldn't work out how to get home. The more you raise your awareness,
that's an odd place. Like, they're not finding you easily out in the middle of Norway, right? Like unless you have a GPS phone, they're not finding you easily out there.
And it was getting dark, and there was a lot of steep cliffs and waterfalls and things. So I was pleased to get home. So the more you raise your awareness, the more you know the best path to go that's going to take you to where you want to go. The second principle is to develop possibility consciousness.
Okay.
So once you start to raise your awareness, it's really important that you are being open-minded. Sometimes I see people say, well, I can't do this because I've tried before and it didn't work. Well, life is always changing.
Yeah.
And we are always changing. And the past and the present do not automatically dictate the future. They influence the future through the law of cause and effect. But every moment is a new moment of possibility, and we're living in a very fast changing world.
Yeah.
That when we're setting goals or we're making our plans about the next year, we need to consider all the possibilities, because there may be things we've tried in the past that didn't work, but that doesn't mean they won't work now. Principle number 3 is to find balance. Life works best, businesses, teams all work best when we're in balance. And the thing with balance is it's always going out of balance.
Yeah, that's true.
Because of change. So, whenever we're setting goals, making plans, it's important to ask, will these plans, this goal, this intention, will that help me to have more balance in my life? Will it take me out of balance? What will it do with the team, with the group? And am I aware of that? Am I prepared to pay the price? I work with a lot of executives that sometimes are low on awareness, and they only realize they're out of balance once they've crashed.
Yeah, that's
I
think that's true for entrepreneurs. We have habits. We have a habit of doing that. I think entrepreneurs have a habit of being in pursuit of a goal, or one goal. So, for example, building a successful business or making a certain amount of money. And then we tend to, and I've done this in my life, trade off other elements around me in the short term to achieve that.
Yeah.
So trade off your health for your wealth, which is a common one, or trade off your relationships to focus on growing the business or dealing with a challenge in the business or changing the economy or changing technology, and actually focus on that, and then not spending time with your kids or stuff like that, right?
Seen it again and again.
It's easy to do. It's quite hard to spot.
Yeah. I think when you're in it, it's hard to spot. I've fallen into the same trap before now, just pushing too hard. These days, I take a life balance check twice a year.
Oh, really?
Now, the thing with life balance or self balance, brain balance even, it's never a static point. The word balance conjures up a picture for a lot of people like a set of scales where it's an even balance. But life balance and self balance is much more like the balance that is needed to ride a bicycle. We actually need momentum to create equilibrium. Being balanced on a bicycle and staying still is a tricky thing.
That's a great insight. Oh, I've not heard it put that way before. I've always struggled with that when people say, work-life balance or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not moving anywhere, right?
No,
so
you need momentum.
Yes. Okay.
And that brings the fourth principle, which is find and follow your purpose. Be on purpose is the exact word in the principle, because my take on purpose is that purpose is like a path.
Okay.
It's similar to a goal, but it's not the same.
Right.
A goal, to be a goal, will have a defined target date that you aim for to achieve that goal. And a purpose doesn't have an end date.
Right.
It's a journey.
Right.
And so my analogy is that purpose is like a path. And if you're moving along your path, that's the momentum that you need to help you maintain your balance.
Okay.
This also brings the fifth principle. If you imagine that purpose is like a path, as you move along your path, every so often are going to come choices. Do I go left? Do I go right? Do I go straight ahead? And so the fifth principle is become fully response able.
Yep.
Develop your ability to choose your response. And the essence of responsibility is choose, which means we need to raise our awareness. We need to be conscious to make that choice. And a lot of people are doing the opposite. They're very much unconscious and they're being reactive rather than consciously choosing. Principle number 6, the very best thing you can choose is to hold a positive focus. If you maintain a positive focus on yourself, the chemical release of neurotransmitters from your brain, such as serotonin, oxytocin, raise your self-worth, your feeling of self-esteem, how good you feel about yourself. And from that comes your authentic confidence. If you maintain a positive focus on life, you invariably start to spot the opportunities that are hidden behind difficulties very often. But when we become negative, we see more of the negative. And then the 7th principle, involve to evolve. Well, we're living in the age of network. It's never been easier with modern technology to collaborate with other people, even if they're on the other side of the world. And so any meaningful goal or achievement is normally going to require the involvement of others.
100%.
And so with the 7 principles, there are questions you can ask of each of the principles. And with question number 7, involve to evolve, the 2 key questions I ask people are, who are you involved with already that can help you in this endeavor that you have? And the flip of the question is, if you go down this path, if you set this goal, how is that going to affect the people you're already involved with? So your family, your team, for instance, because sometimes we set a goal and we make changes and people don't always take the time to consider what that's going to mean for people around them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, actually. I think that's a great question because I think, it's easy to go, well, I'm all in on this, but it actually might have a negative impact on other people. Do you go away to do this? When you said, sorry, just going back for a minute, you said you do this twice a year, so 6 months.
The life balance check.
Yeah. Do you go away to do that? Where do you, or do you do,
no.
How do you set that up?
It's a simple exercise. I used to do it with pen and paper. It looks a little bit like a life wheel, which a lot of coaches and trainers know, but it's actually quite different because within the questioning process, I'm asking myself, if I take the check, or other people when I guide them through it, how much balance they have within different aspects of themselves, as well as life. So how much balance do you think you have right now mentally between creative mind and logical mind? How much balance do you have right now within your emotions? I'm not someone who promotes the idea of being purely positive. I think that's just another form of delusion. If we're not aware of the hole in the ground because we just want to keep our head in the clouds wearing rose-tinted specs, we've got a real danger of falling in that hole. It's important to be aware of the reality. But of course, we don't want a 50-50 balance where I'm looking at the negative 50% of the time and looking at the positive 50% of the time. We only need a minor focus on the negative, but some negative thinking, some self-doubt is actually good for us because it causes us then to be discerning. I've put together teams before now where everyone in the team is positive and one person comes up with an idea and they'll go, yeah, and run off down the road without thinking about some of the challenges that are going to come up on the journey. So good to have someone in the team somewhere that's a bit of a devil's advocate.
Yeah, well, you've got, one of my clients or good friends called it red team thinking. You've got to have somebody who's looking at the risk, right? Somebody who's evaluating what could go wrong. This is why we always talk about, in the grown up business framework, we talk about having the right team dynamics. You've got to have that. Yeah, you need the optimistic can do people but you also need the people on the team who can look at the risk profile, worry about that kind of stuff, make sure that you're not worry about running out of money rather than the fact that we can afford everything. And that you do need people on the team who can ask the more pointed questions. Well, great, but like, how are we going to do that? And I think the danger is, and I think you made the point well, I think with all of this, it's about the balance, right? It's like, it is about the balance. I think one of the hardest things at the moment, just generally, and I'm seeing it with a lot of the clients I work with, and I don't know if you are, but as well, but there's so much negativity at the moment around. There seems to be more negativity genuinely than I've experienced for quite a considerable amount of time, actually. And I think there is a real battle between good and evil going on a physical level and a spiritual level, and that's definitely happening right now. And I think we have a responsibility to be out in the world sharing the possibility, the positive, but also the possibility thinking, right? That there is more possible than people really can realize.
I think it's easy to fall into a a negative mindset because there is a lot to worry about. You know, for people that are inclined to, I look at the news some days and it's just despairing. You know, to see the war, the famine, the arguing going on around the world, and the unevenness within society, with some people having such a lot and others struggling so much and not necessarily getting the help they need. I think it's really a time when people need to wake up, become more aware, and step up in terms of taking responsibility for themselves, for their health, for their well-being, for their future. I think there's an attitude amongst many people of, you know, fix me or sort me out, or
the entitlement trap. I guess there's definitely a large percentage of the population at the moment, I think, that's suffering with that kind of entitlement thinking. You know, I'm involved, and actually the CEO of the business is coming on the podcast in a few weeks' time, in a health and wellness facility, right? Like, and it's really interesting the amount of people now who are starting to take personal responsibility for their own health. They're starting to realize that actually, look, if I really want to live a healthy, fulfilled, energetic life, then I need to take responsibility for this. I can't outsource it to the state.
No,
I can't
absolutely.
I can't outsource it to other people. I need to take responsibility for that. And I think, you know, in that business, we're seeing a real shift of people who are coming in and going, look, if I want to get healthy, I've got to start investing in my health. I've got to take responsibility for that. And I think all change comes from that first shift, doesn't it? Of going, okay, like, if it is to be, it's up to me. Right. That's great to get you started. But in my experience is like that will then become a trap where you start to become overly self-reliant and don't build a team, don't build a community around you, don't have other people that you can build with and trust. And that, I think that's always one of the traps, is that I think personal development, for me, that whole phrase was great. You know, if it is to be, it's up to me, right? Great. Brilliant.
Jim Rohn one.
Brilliant, Jim Rohn. We love it. Up to the point at which you become completely just, or I did anyway, like I was like, I'll just work harder than everyone else. Because if it is to be, it's up to me. So I've got to do it all by myself. And that self-made trap that gets pushed by the media as you're a self-made millionaire, you're a self-made man, whatever. Like, until you're there, you realize that actually it's nothing to do with that. Nobody succeeds on their own. You know, Lewis Hamilton talks about, like, you need a team to live the dream, right? Like, none of us get there on our own. And I'm only here, you're only here because we're standing on the shoulders of giants of people who came before us. Jim Rohn, we've talked about a lot, Brian Tracy, Ziegler, all those guys that came before us just informed our thinking. And I think the best education you can get is self-education.
Yeah,
without question. Like, I was at an event and I was on a panel and I was speaking, and somebody said to me, I've got like £1,000, so I can't remember the exact number, but say it was £1,000, and they said, I've got £1,000 to invest. What do you think I should invest in? And you know, there's somebody on the panel going crypto, and there's somebody else going this, and there's somebody else going that. And they got to me, and I'm pretty sure they thought I would go, oh, you should invest in your business or something. And I just said, look, I think you should invest in getting educated enough that you don't have to ask that question of a bunch of people you don't know. I said, first of all, you need to invest in, like, learning more about what to do with your money and what interests you and what's good advice and what's not. And I said, like, the best thing you can do with that £1,000 is spend it on you. And I think I had this really interesting conversation with somebody who brought Dale Carnegie to the UK actually, and he was sort of he behind the license for the UK back in the 70s, and he brought Dale Carnegie training to the UK, and he said the biggest single challenge with the UK versus the US when he would speak to the corporate in the US was that in the US they would sell lots of their how to influence training, people also how to be positive in a negative world. There's whole training around that. In America, those are bought by individuals. Yes, they're bought by corporates, but their majority of the sales come by selling them to individuals who want to improve their life and get better. Over here, he couldn't sell it to individuals. Yeah. He had to get into companies, and the companies would then pay for the training. And there was this kind of mentality amongst people that he came across, which was like, that's not my job to pay for that training. The company should pay for it. Whereas he said in America, there is this mentality of, look, if I want to get better, I've got to invest in myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first belief shift you've got to get, in my opinion, if you're going to be successful at anything, is realizing that you are responsible for your own education. Nobody else. You want to get good at something? Study it. When you and I started, we grew up, didn't we, on books and tapes and CDs and all of that stuff, right? Like now, there's podcasts like this, there's podcasts, there's, audio books. The access to information, it's a bit like when you said with reading, the access to information for the generation now coming through, they have no idea what it was like to not have that stuff, which means you almost don't value it.
I remember going into bookshops when I first learned to read, about 30, 31, and there would be a tiny little section that was the personal development section. A shelf with maybe 5 or 6 books on it. It's very different now, of course. People can access personal development, like you say, in so many different ways. Jim Rohn, again, because probably my favorite speaker, formal education make you a living, self-education is going to make you a fortune.
True.
And he was just so great on the idea of educating yourself.
Of the 7 that you just listed, which one do you think is the one that people struggle with the most?
Personal responsibility.
Why?
Because I think it says what you said just now. If it's to be, it's up to me. And a lot of people don't actually like that.
No.
A lot of people want to blame something or someone for why they've not been successful or why they're not happy. When I made the transition into training.
Yeah, how did that come about? Like, was it, just go back to the book you were talking about. You said goal mapping came to you when you were driving at midnight down on the car.
Yeah. So what happened was I used personal development in my sales career.
What were you selling?
Water filters and air filters.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was doing well, and lots of people wanted to know how. And my manager asked if I would start running some workshops for the rest of the team, because I'd read a book a week, and everything that I read, if I liked it, if it made sense, I would then apply it in my life. I'd try it out. What's it like to use this technique? And gradually I was learning more and more different techniques and ways of working. And my manager would ask me, put on a presentation for the rest of the team. And then people in my local community notice, well, I'm more confident than I have been, and I'm managing to turn things around. It took me 10 years to pay back the debt.
Wow.
Didn't happen quickly. And I could have gone personally bankrupt, but I wanted to pay back the debt, not because I wanted to give the money to the bank particularly, but because I wanted my mum and dad to keep their house. And that became my sort of driving purpose.
Right.
And so I started running workshops, and then someone who'd been on one of the workshops recommended me to a training company in London called Speakers International, and they had set up to promote the work of, firstly, Tony Robbins, but they also acquired the licenses to promote Stephen Covey, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, and some of the English speakers, people like Tony Bazan, the founder of mind mapping,
Yeah.
Colin Rose, founder of accelerated learning, Paul McKenna with his hypnosis work.
Jim Steele?
Yes, Jim Steele was one of the trainers. He joined maybe just 2 months before I joined.
No way. Really?
And he was the first trainer, so he became head trainer because he was the first one to join. And then gradually more trainers joined. There was about 30 of us at one time. But Jim Steele, me, and 2 other trainers, we were selected to be given more certification training. So
Right.
we were trained up in the work of Stephen Covey, who became my favourite trainer, Tony Robbins and others, and we would go all around the UK making presentations based on their work to drum up business for the main seminars.
Which they would come over and
They
deliver.
would come over and do once a year, and we'd be sort of the fill-in guys in between people like Tony or Stephen Covey coming over. And the thing that I become fascinated in was that I'd make a presentation probably every day somewhere in the UK, even at the weekends very often. And I could almost guarantee that someone somewhere in the presentation would say, why wasn't I shown this at school? Why didn't someone explain these principles and positive thinking when I was young? It would have made such a difference to my life. Why isn't it being taught in school? And I hadn't had a very good experience at school, and I hadn't been there very much. There were some good teachers, there were other teachers not so good, but it started me thinking, why aren't we teaching it? And I realized, well, most teachers don't know it for themselves.
True.
And the more I studied, the more I realized there doesn't seem to be a set, established way of how to set goals. And I decided I would narrow my focus down onto only goal setting. And every so often, someone like Brian Tracy would come to the UK, and I knew Brian Tracy's work probably the best out of everyone in the team. And so they would say, go look after Brian Tracy, and that would give me the opportunity to have dinner with him. And I'd pick his brains about goal setting. I do the same thing with Stephen Covey and others that come over. And I realized everybody had a different opinion on what was important with setting goals. And then driving my car, after about a year of study, 1994, I just had this flash of insight. And I saw a goal map, and I realized intuitively that this was an answer to my question about how to set goals in a powerful way. And I understood instantly it's the combination of words for the conscious mind and imagery for the subconscious mind that is fundamentally important. At the time, if you picked up a personal development book back in 1994 and you turned to the section on goal setting, it would tell you to write out a long list of your goals, like doing lines at school. Line after line after line, saying the same stuff. And the advice from people like Zig Ziglar, for instance, would be rewrite that list and do it every day for a month, line after line after line. And the reason why trainers recommended the mind-numbing repetition is because you need to repeat the words a lot for them to have any real meaningful impact on your subconscious. Your subconscious mind works like having your own personal autopilot, and it responds to pictures much more than words. In the late 1980s, early 90s, sports psychologists started to understand this. And it was the beginning of using visualization. First the Americans, then the Russians, they were quite close together, and using visualization with sports people to enhance their physical performance. From there, it was a relatively short step that people started using dream boards and vision boards to capture a visualization and to set goals that way. They really come about in sort of 2000 is when dream boards started to become popular. The challenge with dream boards and vision boards is they don't have any words. They tend to be just a lot of nice pictures cut out of a magazine, stuck on a board like a collage. There's no achievement date, there's no action plan. They're really only stimulating creative mind.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you're saying that's one of the main reasons why dream boards don't work, right? That's one of the reasons?
Yeah, there's a bunch of reasons, but the main reason is they're only stimulating creative mind.
Right.
If you're only writing the goals, you're only stimulating logical mind, or right brain, left brain, as the term is. And either way, it's incomplete. A goal map uses a combination of words written in the form of affirmation. And the reason words are important is that when you're setting goals, you want to be precise. You want to quantify. You need to say how much, how many, by what time. And with words, you can do that very clearly in a way that's difficult in imagery.
Yeah.
But the pictures are very important to command the subconscious. So words more for the conscious mind, so you can be clear and precise.
Yeah.
Imagery more for the subconscious mind.
Right.
So that you can command the subconscious. And that's why when we dream in pictures, because it's our conscious mind that goes to sleep. Our subconscious keeps working, and as it moves to the surface, it produces dreams in the form of pictures, because imagery is the language of the subconscious.
Which is, I just want to stop on this for a second, because do you think a lot of the reasons why people like Zig Ziglar and stuff used to tell us just to write stuff down, and I always struggle with that. I because I've got dyslexia, that's just a very hard thing for my brain to do. I find it really boring. But also, do you think a lot of that was just because we didn't understand the neuroscience?
Absolutely.
We just didn't get, nobody knew what the neuroscience was.
Absolutely. And when I first started teaching goal mapping, nobody else was teaching anything like it.
I remember seeing you do it. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, this conversation has been about 30 years in the making, because I remember the hotel too. This is how weird it is. I remember exactly the hotel. I think it might still be it was a Hilton hotel in Southampton, and it was a Tuesday or Wednesday night.
Is it the Pyramid Hotel?
Yeah, I think it might have been. Yeah, and it was I was a member at the time of the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management.
Yeah, I used to do a lot.
You were the speaker that night, and I was in the audience. And
the ISMM.
Yeah, and I reckon I was probably, I don't know, 26 maybe, and I was building a business at the time, and I was building a sales team, national sales team, and I remember just devouring the content that he shared, and I that was probably the first time I'd been exposed to a mind map, even just a mind map. I'd not come across it before that, but I even remember where I was sat in the room. I was sat, if you're looking at the stage, I was sat on the right hand side on the edge seat, about 3 rows in the front, and I remember the presentation like it was yesterday. It's funny how certain things just get burned into your brain. But I remember you doing it. The bit I'm not particularly proud of is the fact that having had you do that, and then me use it for about 3 years to build a multi-million-pound company, and then before it all crashed during the dot-com boom, but I don't use it consistently. I think this is one of the challenges with personal development. I remember having a vision board in my first ever office when I started coaching. I remember having a vision board, and it had loads of cool stuff. Cara wanted this, that, and the other, right? And I remember having dates on it and stuff. And it didn't have affirmations. We should talk about those in a minute. But I remember I got everything off the vision board. So when I achieved it, I would take stuff off, right? And then I remember one year, about a year later, I was really not feeling very motivated or inspired or anything. I was like, my vision board was blank. It was blank. But I hadn't really noticed it get blank because I'd just been removing stuff as I'd achieved it. And then one day I remember sort of looking up and going, oh my God, there's nothing on the vision board. Yeah. Like, how did I get to the point that actually, having known all this and it works so well, now I'm not doing it? And I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it, with personal development? It's like, you do it, it works, and then it's a bit like the fitness stuff, but you stop doing it.
I hear it all the time from people. I had a letter from a guy. He wrote to me from America to say he'd been on one of the corporate workshops and done his goal map,
Right.
and didn't think much about it, and he threw it in the back of a drawer, and his goal was to emigrate to America and to own his own business, and he did very well for himself, and they were moving house. And so because they were moving house, they were clearing out loads of drawers, and he found his old goal map, and he'd achieved everything on it, and he wanted to write to me and tell me about it. And when we teach goal mapping, part of the process is not just creating the map. That's the initial process that starts the formation of new brain cell connections. There's quite a lot of neuroscience in the presentation these days. The key thing is to follow through and look at the map afterwards.
Right.
And when people don't look at the map, many of them will still achieve their goals, but it takes them much longer.
Yeah, I had a client of mine had a picture of his dream house. We've done it, Simon. We've done it on a previous podcast conversation. Came up, and I didn't know this. And he said, "Do you remember when I bought my dream house?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You know, I had the picture of that on my desk for 20 years." I was like, "You're kidding me!" And he was like, "No, I had a literal picture of it. I cut it out from a news agent, like an estate agent thing where he'd got hold of these details, and he kept it on his desk, framed on his desk for 20 years, looking at it." And I'm like, "Wow, that's like A, fascinating." But B, I think the conversation is, how can we shorten the time it takes to achieve our goals, right? Like, that's the question I think we should be asking, because like somebody says, I don't earn enough money, or I don't make a lot of money at the moment, or I'm not making enough money. And I always say, it's not that you're not making enough money, it's that you're not making enough money fast enough. So most of us in our lifetime will earn about £1 million or $1 million if you take the average income, right? So the goal isn't to earn £1 million or $1 million, it's to earn it in less time. And I think quite often we're playing the wrong game. We're trying to achieve the goal rather than go, how do I shorten the time frame? Because if you say, how can I make it in 5 years, your brain's going to go to work to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
And then if you say, well, okay, great. If I can figure out how to make it in 5 years, maybe I can figure out how to make it in 1. And then what if I could figure out how to make it in 3 months? Now, the money is the same. What you've just done is condense the time frame you're doing it over. And I always think if you play that game, you use a bit of a time as a tool, if you like, using time as a tool to go, okay, I can't do it the same way. If I'm giving myself 15 years or 10 years to do it, I can probably incrementally get 10% better every year. But if I'm trying to do it in 2 years, I'd have to completely re-engineer the way I'm doing everything with my business. This is where strategy is so important, because I think unless you get really clear on the ask and the vision, then your brain can't even help you out, can it?
No,
so can you do a goal? Okay, do you do? Remind me, goal mapping for what? For personal, business as well, or the same map?
I recommend that people start with one map where they look ahead, and we don't start with a time frame.
Okay.
So we start with step 1 of goal mapping is dream. And I recommend that for a first map, people have a little daydream about what their best life looks like.
Right.
And to consider all of the areas that are important of living their best life. So health and relationships and career or business. And then from that place to then create more maps. And the extra goal maps they create will be subject or life area specific.
Okay.
So we have a lot of organizations that use goal mapping as part of their training or part of their treatment. We have a very big diet organization that's adopted goal mapping, and there people create a goal map focused on just one thing, which is their well-being. And many of those people will be focused on their kilos, how many kilos they want to weigh. One of the mistakes that people make with a diet goal map is they talk about what they want to lose.
Yep.
It's a negative command to the subconscious. It's much more effective to say how many kilos you want to weigh rather than what it is that you want to lose. But people will create goal maps for just all manner of things. When I first envisaged the technique and then worked it out and understood how to start to use it, I didn't imagine that business would take to it.
Really?
No, I thought, because now we have a digital online platform for people to do their maps. But back in 1995, there were no dream boards or anything at that time. And people needed to write their goals down, but then also we were getting people to draw pictures of their goals. And I thought, no business or executive's going to want to draw pictures with colouring pens. And this would be a great technique for schools.
Yeah, God, so powerful for kids.
Yeah.
So
And we've got it to more than 1 million children now in mainly state education across 30 countries.
really,
But actually, where it first started was with business. And I was so surprised. I got a phone call completely out the blue from a guy that had seen me speak at the ISMM. I picked up quite a few big contracts with the ISMM, and I remember that one in Southampton. Once you mentioned it, can remember it clearly. Mercury Communications was my first corporate contract.
right?
And a guy called Jim Reed, who was customer services director, contacted me and he said, I saw you make a presentation. He said, and I'm customer services director at Mercury Communications. And I've got a bunch of team leaders and I would like some positive thinking for them and simple goal setting. Can you do it? And I said, yeah, I can do it. I said, I've got a new idea for setting goals, but I haven't run first workshop yet. He said, come test it out. And the contract was going to be for 6 weeks. It was a couple hundred people
Right.
in Manchester, Wivenshaw. But from the very first workshop, it became popular. Word spread. I stayed with Mercury 18 months, 5,500 people went through the program.
Wow.
And a lot of those people, they were team leaders and they were setting goals to be managers. And over the next couple of years, people start getting in contact. They'd either email or phone me and say, you won't remember me, I was on your workshop. I did that goal mapping thing, and one of my goals was to be a manager. And I'm now a manager, and I'm at British Telecom. And I've got my own team, my own budget. Will you come run the same workshop for my team? Or I'm at O2, or I'm, cable and wireless. And it just organically spread. First into all the tech companies and comms companies, but then banks and retail. And
Wow.
then we started picking up schools. And then I decided.
And you're doing this all on your own, or have you got a team of trainers at this point?
No, at the time I was on my own. This would have been around about 1998 was when it was really taking off. And then in 1999, I ran my first certification workshop.
Right.
I'd already trained up a couple of people to be my sort of trainers to work with me in the bigger contracts. But then in 1999, I had people that were seeing goal mapping and wanted to teach it themselves, other trainers and coaches. And so I created a certification program, had the first group of 10 go through. Now we've got nearly 1,650 all around the world. Yeah. Yeah, a lot throughout Scandinavia, 100 in Italy, Germany, just all sorts of countries. Some countries where I've never been to, because we do this certification online now as well.
Yeah.
And so there are trainers, like we've got a guy in Africa who I've never met face to face. He took his certification in 2019 and he's now presented goal mapping to over 30,000 children in Nigeria and Kenya and in villages, on paper. So although he learnt it online, he's downloaded the resources.
That's amazing.
He's working on paper because they're in remote rural areas. And the first of those children are now in university, studying to be doctors and lawyers and teachers and people. And so the online has really expanded the reach that we're able to have and the people we can help. And with a lot of teachers as well, it's effective because we can get it to them in a very cost-effective way. And they can learn it in their own time.
Right.
And then if they want to work online, they can use the platform we have. We make that as part
We'll
of
link to that in the
certification.
show.
Yeah.
We'll link to that in the show notes for people who want to check it out. I mean, is that all? Did that all start with you just having a vision for wanting to have that impact on 1 million people, or yeah, was that where that did that come first, or?
I would no, actually. In 2009, I was contacted by a Spanish organization that had seen goal mapping and said, create an online version. And I did a partnership with them, but it wasn't very successful. And the main reason was the tech that they were using was very clunky and nothing smooth about it. And then in 2010, I landed a really big contract here in the UK with Microsoft to run goal mapping out to all of their salespeople. And it was a big deal. And I did very well out of it and spent a year working with their sales department in the UK. And at the end of the year, they were really into goal mapping. But one of their senior guys turned around and he said, if you will create a digital version, because if you haven't noticed, we are a tech company.
Yeah.
So doing our goals on paper with colouring pens seems a bit stiff. If you would create a digital version, we will spin it out to other divisions in Microsoft around the world. And so we went back and I found a different team, and Microsoft wanted us to use their coding for it. So that it was a Microsoft product in a way. And we created it for them, and they've shared it with over 200,000 people around the world. But coding goes out of date.
Yeah.
And in 2014, I lost a big contract, which the director, the HR director, was trying to do her goal map on her iPad.
Right.
And we had built the system for Microsoft using their coding.
Yeah.
And it didn't work well with Apple. And she became so frustrated that she couldn't get her map to work well that she cancelled the contract. And so I commissioned another team to build the third generation. And we started that in 2016, and it's the version we use now. And the truth is, I'll be really honest, I didn't use it myself. I created it because I knew we wanted it for our corporate clients, but I wasn't using it. And the reason I wasn't using it, I was just into the habit pattern of taking out paper templates and a bunch of colouring pens, and I was drawing my maps on paper the same way that I'd done it since I first started in 1994. But then, every so often something comes that you don't expect. And I'd been blessed with very good health my whole life. And then suddenly I was rushed into hospital, and the doctors sat me down and said, "You are very lucky to be alive." And my body, in particular my lungs, was full of blood clots.
No way.
They never found the cause for it. But part of the treatment was you've got to sit still. I was international speaker, I was jet setting around the world, which is what they think may have caused the blood clots. Because I was flying to New Zealand, I'd make a presentation for Tony Robbins for his Platinum Partners or someone. And then I'd have another presentation booked here. So I'd fly straight back to the UK, or I'd fly to Germany, or wherever I needed to go. And I was doing that for years and years and years. And it just took its toll on my body. We think that's what caused the blood clots. So I had to sit still for a year. They didn't even want me driving around the UK, let alone flying it.
Really?
And yeah. And because I had to sit still, I thought, well, I've got a lot of people that, still want coaching and want to learn goal mapping. And I've got this online program that I'm not using. So I started working online in 2018, and I realized this is actually much more powerful. And by 2019, I transitioned 75% of my business to online, because 80% of my business is outside the UK anyway.
Right.
So I was able to move my business online. I was doing a lot of business online in 2019. But the barrier I was hitting was that there were still a percentage of people didn't want to work online.
Mm.
And then, of course, 2020 COVID come.
Changed everything.
Changed all of that. And I found myself well positioned. Fortunately, it was a happy accident, really. It wasn't anything I planned strategically, but it turned out very well for me. And since that time, yes, I'm traveling. I've just been away on speaking in Norway, and before that was in Croatia and Italy speaking.
Wow.
So I still travel a fair bit, but I present online several times a week. Whereas in the past, I might be doing 1 or 2 presentations a week. I'm doing loads and loads and loads, plus the physical travel.
Yeah.
When it suits, I do cherry pick a little bit.
Yeah. So go back to the goal mapping thing for a second. What do people get wrong about goal setting?
Well, I think a lot of the time, one of the mistakes is, and you see this a lot when it gets to New Year's resolutions, people say, I ask people, have you written your goal down? They say, no, because I know what I want. Yeah, but you also know what you don't want. And the two thoughts cancel each other out.
Oh, right.
Your subconscious mind is goal orientated. It wants a target. It's like having your own personal autopilot. Or the analogy we use in the children's version of the program is that the subconscious is like a magical genie. It can do amazing things. It's very powerful. It can help your wishes come true. But the one thing that your subconscious cannot do is to wish for you. You must command the genie. You must give a target for your subconscious autopilot to follow. And when you think about what you want, your subconscious will move you towards it. And as soon as you start to doubt that you will achieve it, or you think about failure, you're sending the opposite command to your subconscious. Some people overly think about failure, and that sends them into some form of self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Because the subconscious mind cannot make value judgments. If you're thinking overly about what you don't want, your subconscious is going to give it to you.
How do you break that, though? If
Write the goal down.
Okay. Because I was going to say, because I there have been times, and I've had one fairly recently actually, where I often my son and I we both got dyslexia, but we've also got what we suffer with, or I think we suffer with, like, we just get the black cloud come down over our brain.
Yeah.
And when that comes,
I know it.
do you know it?
Yeah.
When that happens, it's very hard to explain to anyone else. It's very hard to see anything positive at all, and certain things trigger it. But if it doesn't happen, I've worked really hard on myself to work it out of my system, but it still comes back. There are times when it gets triggered, right? Let's time around the day we're recording this podcast is actually the anniversary of my mum passing away. Normally it triggers a lot for me this day, and you know and therefore I find that black cloud comes down around certain times of the year. Like, how do you break out of that if you start doing self-sabotage? Because I think when you're in that spiral, it's a bit like water around a drain pipe.
Yeah.
You know, once it starts going down, it goes both ways, right? When it starts going positive, great, but also when it starts going negative, it goes the other way. And I think, like, how do you break out of that cycle if you find yourself in that? Because, like, you know, if you've lost a business, or you've had a relationship breakup, or you've lost a big customer, you know, I was on with a customer of mine, a client the other day. They lost a big customer, and we knew this was a risk. They were 35% of the turnover, so we had a plan to deal with it, but it happened much sooner than we thought it was going to happen. Right now, did we manifest it? Did we not? Because we were talking about it. That's an interesting conversation in itself. But it happened. They'd given indications it was coming. They accelerated by about 3 months. Now, I had to spend a good hour chatting to her and getting her to refocus, because she was, now that's gone wrong. This is going to go wrong. That's going to go wrong. You know, and it could very easily spiral down. Like, how do you break out of that? Like,
if you write the goal down, you're capturing the thought. Okay. And by putting it onto paper, it makes it more powerful. It's important to write the goal in the form of affirmation.
Yeah. So what is an affirmation for people who don't know? Just to be clear.
Affirmation is a statement of truth, if you like. That's what affirmation means, statement of truth.
Right.
When you affirm something, you're saying, here is the truth. When you write your goals as an affirmation, it's you saying, this is the truth for me.
Right.
There's a whole science in how you write affirmation, a bunch of keys, if you like, to make the affirmation powerful. The three important keys are personal, positive, present tense. And this is where a lot of people go wrong in their goal setting. They don't use affirmation.
Yep.
Even if they write the goal down, which most people don't. They write their goals in the form of a shopping list.
Right.
Lose weight.
By the way, you can't do that because you know what your subconscious is. This is the best thing. I have to share this because it's just like someone says to me, I want to lose 5 pounds, whatever, 10 pounds, right? I would say the challenge is your brain is unconsciously trained to find things when you lose them. Because when you lose your keys, what do? Go look for them. If you lose your children, what do? Go find them. So if you lose weight, you just go find it back. It's like release it has a different method, by the way. I'm going to release 10 pounds, has a very different programming on the brain than losing it, right?
Absolutely.
So I think language is just so powerful.
Well, the other thing that's important to understand is that personal, positive, present tense, these three major keys to affirmation, there are others. They are important because they apply directly to how the subconscious mind works.
Right.
One of the strange qualities of the subconscious mind is it doesn't understand time. So you must always say the goal like it's a reality now.
Okay.
By using I, you are becoming the creator of the reality.
Right.
You're not putting it outside of yourself. And you must say what you want and not what you don't want, because the subconscious mind cannot process abstract thought in that way. It doesn't understand the concept of don't. You can watch this in real time with young children. So if you've got a young child, a toddler, who hasn't really developed their conscious mind, if you tell a young child don't touch, they invariably touch because their subconscious is at the surface and it can't process that don't. Now, when we're fully grown, our conscious mind is developed. And if someone tells you don't touch, you know that means keep your hand away. But your subconscious is still working under the same language pattern. And so when someone says, I don't want to be overweight, all the subconscious takes on that is, I want to be overweight.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to be broke, or I don't want to be sad, because it doesn't understand don't. And not only do people make this mistake with what they say to themselves, they very often project it onto others. Don't forget is a common
Don't worry.
example.
Drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Need to get on a rant for a second. First of all, do you know how many signs there are that say don't park here?
I know, don't speed.
Don't speed.
Don't drink and drive.
Don't. And you say to somebody, and they say, oh, don't worry. Or no worries, which drives me mad when people say that, right? Don't worry about that. It's just don't worry. It's like the two really bad. Why would you use that as a program?
Habit pattern.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that don't understand psychology in the same way that are advising, like the police and people with their road signs where it's all don't this, don't that. It's no more words or effort to say, please remember.
True.
But it's a positive command to the subconscious rather than don't forget. If you give a young child a brimming glass of water and you say, don't spill it, don't wobble, they will wobble and they will spill it. It's this same principle. And so personal, I, positive, say what you want, present tense, say it like it's the reality now.
Yep.
Some extra keys are passion, because emotion is what gives a thought power.
Right.
All the thoughts in your mind are sort of equal. You add emotion and it makes the thought stand out more. My weight goal is I feel fantastic and free at 88 kg. I'm 89 at the moment when I got on the scales this morning. So I could say I weigh 88 kg. That's an affirmation,
Yeah.
but it's not feeling very exciting. I feel fantastic and free at 88 kg. It just gives it a bit more substance, gives it more meaning, it sticks in the mind more. The affirmation is a command to the subconscious. The picture is important because it forms the visualization. And all of the thoughts we think and the things we say to ourselves influence an inner paradigm that we carry.
Yeah.
In psychology, it's called self-image. Our subconscious reads that inner picture every moment of every day to keep you the same.
Right.
You know, when we wake up in the morning, we don't have to spend a lot of time thinking, who am I, how do I do stuff?
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of pictures from our past experience that in any given situation, our subconscious can read the inner picture like a blueprint and say, okay, the way you respond to this situation is like this. It's how our habit patterns are regulated.
But the brain also likes what's familiar, right?
Yeah.
That's the other trap, is the brain likes what's familiar.
It likes the repetition.
Yeah, it likes the same thing because it's safe.
I received again a phone call out the blue that had a huge impact on me. Would have been about 2006. A lady phoned me up. She said, "You won't know me, but I'm a big fan of goal mapping. I've got your home audio pack." It was on the old cassette tapes. And so I've got your goal mapping pack, and I've been using it a couple of years, and I've achieved a lot. And I'm the CEO of the largest obesity society in the UK, of Lighter Life. Got 70,000 members. Wow. And I want to start recommending to all of our members that they use goal mapping for their weight loss in conjunction with our treatment, our process. And I want to make sure you're okay with that before we start recommending. I'm absolutely okay. You're a lot of new customers. I said, "Why have you chosen goal mapping?" And she said, "Well, there's some good goal setting systems." She said, "We've got our own." She said, "But your system is the only one that I've come across that helps people to change that inner picture."
Yep.
And she said, "This is fundamentally important when people want to diet, because the problem a lot of people have with diet is that they try to force a new behavior and to change their eating pattern and lose some weight, but they're still carrying an inner mental picture of them being over their normal weight."
That's their identity, right?
And yeah, and having negative eating patterns like binge eating. And they yo-yo in their diet because they're forced to change and lose some weight, but they've still got this inner picture of them being overweight. Their subconscious looks at that and says, well, you're meant to be this shape and have these patterns. And so they put all the weight back on. And that was a new insight for me. But since that time, we have a lot of people now that have taken the certification program, and many of them are therapists, and they're working with people in recovery, either people that have given up alcohol or maybe tobacco or more serious addictions, narcotics, for instance. And it's the same essence that is needed, which is changing this inner mental picture.
You're talking about identity, though, really, right?
It is identity.
At a core level, that's what you're talking about.
Self-image, yeah.
James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
In Atomic Habits, he talks about the fact that when people are trying to change a habit, most people try and work from the outside in. So they'll try and change, like go to the gym 3 times a week. They'll try and do that. Then they'll
rather than inside.
Yeah,
out.
they have to change. So you have to see yourself as a fit and healthy person before you're going to go to the gym 3 times a week. They try to work from the outside in terms of forcing themselves to do a behavior, or to force themselves to be disciplined, which is why people say, "Oh, you've got to be disciplined." Well, actually, if you see yourself as a fit, healthy, vibrant person, like for me, I've got one of my affirmations is, why do I find it so easy to build muscle and burn fat? Like, why do I find it so easy to do that? Because my brain's going to ask the question, well, it's because I eat clean, because I drink, because I consume a lot of protein every day, because I go to the gym 4 times a week, because I go and have, IV drips to look after my muscles, whatever the answer is that my brain gives me with that question. But that question, if I ask it every day,
stemming from that inner identity.
It's coming from identity out. And I think that's one of the biggest one of the biggest challenges I see with personal development is most people talk outside in, not inside out. They don't talk about how do you shift the identity. Once I can put it in a business context for a second, once I can get somebody to see themselves, a client of mine to see themselves as a scale-up CEO, right? As their job is to scale the business, not to run it, not to be the operator, not to be stuck in it, but to grow it, right? To scale it. And they can move from being an operator to being a CEO, to being an owner, in that owner mindset, right? The CEO, right? And once they get that shift, they never go back. They won't tolerate going back to being an operator because they're like, I don't do that anymore. I did that. I don't do that anymore. But if you don't shift someone's identity, you'll never change the behavior. You'll never beat it.
Agree.
And I think this is where a lot of people try and change the behavior without shifting the identity. And I think that's why I love your tool, is because it talks to the unconscious, and the conscious at the same time, right?
I had a lovely message from a lady who was unfit and overweight, and she wanted to lose some weight and to get fit, but she had a real resistance to exercise, and her husband had bought her a bicycle because she wanted to start doing cycling as part of her exercise regime, but she just had this resistance to getting on the bicycle. And then she was on one of our master classes and did her goal map and wrote to me to say that she was out riding the bicycle and she didn't remember making the choice.
Right.
She just realized, I'm on the bicycle. She didn't remember making the decision to go to the shed and get the bicycle and get on the bike and ride. And it's because she had created in her map this inner picture of her riding the bicycle, and that inner picture had become part of that identity.
Yeah.
And that identity is the command to the subconscious. It's reading that inner picture to take its cue for what you should do.
You can't consistently outperform the identity that you have. And I think this is where I'd like to go, just because I want to have this bit of the conversation with you before we finish. But like, I think at the moment, a lot of people have a challenge around money, right? We are being conditioned to think scarcity, not abundance. Everything is a crisis. There's a cost of living crisis. There's everything financially at the moment. There is a lack, and there's more money around than there's ever been in history, right? 60% of the world, the money in circulation was printed in the last 5 years. So like, there is more money around than ever before. The challenge is that most people, I think people are being conditioned to believe that they can't achieve it, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the conditioning, if that's the cultural hypnosis, how do you break out of that, number one? And two, how do you overcome a limiting belief to earn more money? Like, how do you shift that? Because if you're an entrepreneur, you're wanting to succeed, you're wanting to grow your business, you need to be able to make more profit, you need to be able to make more money. How do you use the tools that you've been developing to help overcome that limiting belief? Because if you've only ever made, I'll give you a good example, right? Less than 7% of businesses in the world ever turn over $1 million or more.
Yeah.
Right? So if you've never turned over $1 million or more, you might have a limiting belief that I can't do that because I've never done it before. So how do you shift past something you've never done before? Like, how do you break through that? I can. How do you shift to a level of belief that you're actually going to go execute? Because I've got stuck with this where I've resisted setting goals because I was afraid of not hitting them. Right. So I wouldn't even write them down, because if I don't write them down, I can't fail, can I?
Yeah.
Like that. Is that common? Do other people have that? Or is it just,
I think it's very
I'm asking for a friend.
No, very.
Just asking for a friend.
No, it's incredibly common. We run a whole series of masterclasses where we focus on different life areas and subjects and help people create goal maps focused on that one area, one subject. One of those life areas is financial freedom. We get people to do a goal map for financial freedom. Many people will contact me and say, will you look at my map, give me some feedback, or can we arrange a coaching session so I can talk through it? And so many people are struggling to achieve financial freedom, as you have said. And most times it's driven by a limiting belief.
Right.
And in the vast amount of cases, that limiting belief comes from a young age.
Okay.
They develop the limiting belief very often in childhood, and they pick it up either from their parents or sometimes family members. Can be people pick up limiting beliefs in school. Sometimes it's a cultural thing. So in Norway, where I've just been, I worked quite a lot in Scandinavia. There's a cultural belief there. It's called jantelov, and it has 10 points, jantelov. But what it basically comes down to is don't do too well.
Really?
Yeah, don't shine too bright. It's not right. It's going to make other people feel bad. Just enough is okay. And you can see this law reflected in their tax laws and all manner of different things. But I find that most times when I'm coaching individuals, certainly in the UK, that have got limiting beliefs around financials, it's normally coming from things they've heard as a child. Money's scarce, money's dirty, rich people aren't very nice. If you make a lot of money, you won't have a lot of friends.
Yeah, that one I've heard.
It's throwaway lines from parents or other people. But in a young child, because their conscious mind isn't developed, regular casual comments gradually solidify into subconscious commands. The comment becomes the command, and it becomes a barrier.
That's powerful.
But the thing with a belief is that once you've formed a belief, you're not normally aware of it. It's not like it's there signposted in your conscious mind. It sits at an unconscious level, but it's like a little whispering voice. If it's a positive belief, it's saying you can, you can, you can. And if it's a limiting belief, it's saying you can't, you can't, you can't. And so in the coaching process, it's a two-way flow. The positive is create a goal map with a very clear picture of you succeeding. And if it's that breakthrough to £1 million business, then we want a picture and affirmation around that and a very strong sense of purpose about why it's important, not just money for the sake of it. But then the flip side is we want to examine and question the limiting belief. Because most times a belief, particularly a limiting belief, is not really built on anything concrete.
Right.
It's an opinion that someone has formed, and it will have a bunch of references that hold it in place. I can't because I tried once, it didn't work. I can't because my mum and dad always told me that I couldn't, or I can't because there'll be some becauses. But if you start to question those becauses, you find that they're not built on anything tangible. And it's like your limiting belief is the top of a table, and every because you have is a leg. Well, you question them enough, it's like pulling away the legs. You're going to collapse that tabletop or limiting belief and allow the full potential to come through. Want to make the positive beliefs stronger than the negative. So we do what we can to diminish the negative by questioning it and discovering that really it's not built on anything solid. And we want to enhance the positive by using affirmation and visualization. The subconscious mind, like the brain, doesn't really know the difference between something intensely imagined and something real, which is why people often suffer with trauma, is because they get a picture stuck of some negative thing they've been through and it plays over and over. But that negative picture will trigger the release of all the neurotransmitter chemicals that give us emotion. So if you think about something negative, you're going to start to feel negative.
Yep.
Because you'll release cortisol and cortisol. The same is true with picturing something positive, and a goal map captures the positive words and captures the positive picture. When I was first teaching it in at 95, I was like, thought I had something really new. Nobody else was doing it. Other trainers were telling me you got something really new here. And then in 1999, I was invited to a Hindu ceremony in a temple in London.
Right.
And I sat there just blown away because the Brahmin priest was chanting a mantra while visualizing a yantra. So a mantra most people will have heard of. It's a chant, an affirmation that you make over and over. A yantra is less well known, but it's basically a power pattern that the priest meditates on, sometimes drawn on parchment, sometimes created using coloured rice or coloured sand, lots of geometric patterns that have meaning. Buddhists do the same thing. Now, the goal's a little bit different. I am peace, I am love, I am happy.
But they're affirmations.
They're affirmation, and it's still a goal.
Yeah.
I am happy. And it's thought to be 10,000 years old. It predates, it's the oldest part of Hinduism. Zoroastrianism does the same thing. It's found in lots of ancient wisdom literature and culture. And yet modern training and management techniques seem to have overlooked it somewhat.
Yeah.
And it sort of fell out of fashion a little bit to talk about right brain and left brain. And, the left brain is more logical and the right brain is more creative. But it's coming back into neuroscience again because it can clearly be seen now with brain scanning equipment. The left brain tends to specialize in spoken and written language, and the right brain tends to specialize in visualization and spatial awareness. The amazing thing that's come out of the latest brain research with neuroplasticity is how flexible the brain is. And I'm often presenting in universities, and there are some friendly brain scientists that have been quite fascinated with goal mapping over the years. And the amazing thing with neuroscience now, what it's shown is, if one side of the brain is damaged, like if someone has a stroke.
Well, my wife's had a brain injury, so I've got first-hand experience of it.
If they set a goal, they're able to gradually stimulate another part of the brain to rewire and compensate for that damaged area.
Yeah.
And we have people that have had strokes on their left brain that can't speak anymore, that stimulate their right brain to rewire, and they learn to speak again.
Wow.
One of my trainers in Italy had a stroke on his right brain, and he was the head of the Nordic Walking Association in Italy. And you would lead people up into the mountains to go Nordic walking, but he couldn't walk anymore after the stroke. But through goal mapping and setting his goals and determination, he's stimulated the left brain to rewire, and he's now not only walking again, but he's leading groups again, and he speaks about it in conference presentations. And he took a group up into the mountains in Italy, and they did their Nordic walking, and they went to a little hut and they did their goal mapping in the hut, and it's become a regular thing for him now.
Well, okay, that's mind blowing. My wife likes watching these podcasts on YouTube, so when she's watching this, there you go. Brian's telling you that you can fix the stuff that you still want to fix on your brain. I want to ask you a couple of questions because I could talk for hours. I'm fascinated about all of this. I will just share one thing because this might help you with the sort of the younger generation schools and stuff. One of my clients had a brilliant way when we were just talking about sort of the reticular activating system and how your subconscious needs programming. And I was, you and I have been around the industry a long time. We probably used the story of, if you've seen a red car and things like that. And she said, no. She said, you're teaching it all wrong. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, what we should do is say, if you click on a picture on Instagram, what does Instagram do? And it gives you loads of the same stuff. So she said, the more you like certain things on Instagram, the algorithm gives you more of the same.
It to you.
Yeah, as you said, that's basically what you're saying the brain will do. The more you click on the stuff you like, the more it'll give you more that you like.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh, that's just such a really clever way, because basically we're all running an algorithm. The algorithm will give you whatever you click on. It's just, what are you clicking on? Which I just thought was just a brilliant way of doing it. So a couple of questions for me to kind of draw this to a close. So what would you say to sort of a business owner or CEO who feels like they've set goals in the past, maybe they've set annual plans, and nothing's really changed? What do you think they're missing?
Well, sometimes it's they haven't set the goal in the right way. They haven't had the right goal setting formula.
Okay.
We've talked about words and pictures, but that's just the background principle. There
Right.
are 7 steps in the goal mapping system. The first step is have a little daydream about what you want to achieve, make a list, and then work with the left logical brain to identify what's the priority achievement.
Okay.
Because if you make a list of things you want to achieve, and perhaps that list captures your vision or picture of success for what you want to achieve, and you may want all of the things equally, but wanting is right brain emotion. And the second step of goal mapping is purely left brain logic. There will be one thing that is the critical thing to achieve, because by achieving that one thing, it gives you some sort of leverage into achieving the other things.
Domino, if you like.
Yeah.
You knock it over.
And Stephen Covey used to say, some things are more important than other things. You know what that one thing is. And so that's the second step, identify the main goal. And then to map it out always in words and pictures, so you're stimulating whole brain activation. The imagery stimulates the right brain, the words stimulate the left brain. Then step 4 is why. What are your strongest emotional motivating reasons? We're motivated by emotion, not by logic. So we want deeply emotional reasons to be the why, which goes at the top of the map. Now, in some corporates where I've done team mapping with them, the reasons will be a little bit more logical, increase profit, reduce costs. But even in the team maps for people like Microsoft, they've got a pride in our work, team spirit, best place to be, top for achievement. So it's emotional, it's collective emotion, team spirit.
Yeah.
And then step 5, when? Need a timeline. Want a target achievement date for the main goal and a starting date. And then step 6.
That's interesting. A starting date. That's interesting. I can imagine. I get the whole kind of goal when you timeline, but what the starting date? Why is that important?
Because you want to see that timeline. Sometimes when I take people through doing a goal map, they've already started on the goal. So they're given a back date as their starting date.
Okay.
Some people, most people, will put down the date of the workshop that we're running the session on. But then some people say, no, we're not going to start this for another month or 2 months.
Right.
And so it's a future date.
Okay.
But the timeline between the start date and the achievement date becomes the framework for the next 2 steps, which is what are the things we need to do to move along a path towards the achievement of the goal. And the final step, who?
Got it.
Who's going to help? Organizations like Siemens, for instance, they did goal mapping with thousands and thousands of their people.
Wow.
And the reason they liked it was that it's a strategy on one page.
Right.
You've got what and the priority, what's most important, why and when and how and who. It's all captured in one A4 sheet. Now, with the digital platform, you can drill that out into more detail. But going through those 7 steps, it's a thinking process. It helps you to get clear consciously on what you need to do and what the priority is and why and what it looks like and all of those things. And then another mistake that businesses are often making is they don't have the team on board with it.
Yeah, good shout. Because I think you've got to get the team bought in, right?
Yeah.
I've always said, and I learned it from Brendan, to be fair, to credit where credit's due.
Brendan Bouchard.
Yeah, Brendan had this great line that he said, people support what they create. And I've always remembered that, because it's like, if you just give people a set of targets and parameters and they have no input into it, then they're not going to want to help achieve what because they don't have any creative input, right?
No.
So I think, you're spot on with that.
The thing that I learnt gradually, it took me a couple of years when I was going and doing goal setting in businesses, is that it's important to give people the opportunity to create a personal goal map.
Right.
Which they can keep to themselves.
Okay, that makes sense.
But then immediately afterwards, a work-specific goal map. We give them a personal development workshop. The workshop is designed to make them think more deeply about their life and their desires and what's important to them. If you don't give people an opportunity to capture that in the form of a personal goal map, they've got a resentment against doing their work goal map. But once they've done their personal goals, I find they're quite happy then to focus on
that makes sense.
the work goals. And by doing a team goal map, everybody's bought in.
Nice.
Everybody's included, everybody's listened to. As soon as we've got a team goal map, everybody then creates their individual work map of their targets and KPIs that feed into the team goal map.
Right.
The biggest single project I did that with was British Telecoms.
Really?
2,500 people.
Wow.
All creating their goal maps for their work objectives. But it started with one map from the senior team, which captured the vision for BT Retail.
Wow.
Then we drilled down through the 11 channels that made up BT Retail at that time, and then down into different departments and managers, team leaders, right down to the individual guys and girls. And BT just found so many different ways to use the maps. So they use them as a personal development plan. They use them for hitting their sales targets with their sales teams. They used it in the graduate program, and they had 8 of their own trainers certified just to have their own self-sufficiency with it.
So I suppose if you're listening to the podcast and you want to find out more about how you can really maybe bring this into your company, obviously goalmapping.com is the main site to head to.
Yeah.
We'll link to that obviously below in the comments. Super excited to announce that you're going to be speaking at the Scale Up Summit in 2026. You don't know this, so this will crack you up. Hilarious, the funny, the small world we live in. So Jim Steele is also speaking at the summit. Yeah, he's going to be finishing it on day 2. So you'll be on day 1, he'll be on day 2. It'll be like a reunion tour basically. So that'll be really funny. And he's in the studio I think it's in about a month's time to come and do a podcast.
Yeah,
because he only lives up the road from me. He lives about half an hour from here. So
last time I saw him was at the National Sales Conference, but we were both due to go on stage, so I never got time to talk much.
I'm sure I shall arrange for us to catch up over dinner, because I think that would be awesome. So goalmapping.com if people want to find out more about the process. You've run, I didn't realize quite how many people you certified around the world. That's quite incredible. So you've had business success, you've had kind of business learnings, I think we'll probably call them that, shall we? What's your definition of a grown-up business? How would you define a grown-up business?
I think it's a business that is self-sufficient without the business owner needing to be there and drive it.
Yeah.
And for me, a hallmark of a really good grown-up business is one that is clear about its purpose.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of businesses aren't.
True.
They might have goals and targets, but the purpose isn't always clear.
I think you have to start with that, right? I think you're so right. I think it goes back to the point you were making as well about having self-awareness and being on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like you, very inspired by Jim Rohn. And one of his sayings that for me just captures so much that's important is, people are prepared to pay the price if the promise is clear. Now, if you create a goal map, it helps you to capture the picture of promise that you hold for the future. And the second half of Jim's saying is, if the promise isn't clear, the price is always too high.
Yeah, so true.
When people lose the vision or lose touch with what the business is about, why it's there and why it exists, the effort, it's always too hard. It's always too much work. People are prepared to pay the price if the promise is clear.
Love that. That's a great. I want to finish on that line, but I do want to finish by asking, you've got 4 books.
Yeah.
If someone's loved this conversation, thank you so much.
Well,
we've covered a ton of ground, and I had so many questions I didn't even get to, but we'll get to another time. But just for me, you've got 4 books. If someone's wanting to dive in and learn more about your whole philosophy and which is the book they should start with?
Goal mapping.
Goal mapping. Start with the goal mapping book.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And
if they've got children, Sam the Magic Genie, which is all of the principles that's in goal mapping, but I wrote it to help children understand how the subconscious mind works. And so
Brilliant.
It's a storybook, but it's written in a way that if an adult is reading it to their child, the adult will get the message.
Yep.
The other books carry the technique. So life mapping is the next technique. And again, it uses words and pictures, but it's more about developing your leadership qualities.
Okay.
And then action mapping is about using your physiology to change habit patterns.
Interesting.
And you asked me a question earlier about, what do you do if you're in that hole, and how do you get yourself out?
Yeah.
Well, positive thinking is good, but like you have mentioned, it's hard to think positive sometimes when you're really feeling down. And so using your physiology, because mind, emotion, and body posture
Yep.
are all connected, and that's what action mapping is about, using your physiology to support you in thinking positively, so you find answers to problems. And then at the deepest level, self-mapping is my more spiritual work.
Oh, really?
And that's about bringing high self and low self together to form your true self. And in that book, I'm mostly talking about ancient philosophy, but I back it up with understandings from modern neuroscience.
Okay, that sounds like a separate podcast we need to do another time, right? I definitely think we have to have you back on to talk about that, because that I would love to dive into. But listen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for traveling over today. It's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Best place for people to find out about you, goalmapping.com?
Goalmapping.com. There's also access there to the free online software that people can go and use.
And follow you on LinkedIn, I'm guessing?
Yeah, LinkedIn on there, and
great stuff.
find me on Facebook and Instagram.
Cool stuff. Excellent. Listen, Brian, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Can't wait to work with you again at the Scale Up Summit. We'll drop a link below in the comments for in the show notes and things to all of your tools, as well as where you can register for when the tickets release for Scale Up Summit next year, where Brian will be making an amazing appearance and taking us even deeper into this. Listen, thank you so much for being on the Grown Up Business Podcast today.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. That concludes this episode of the Grown Up Business Podcast. I hope that got you fired up and ready to grow. The key thing, though, is to remember you get paid on what you get done. So write down the top 3 actions from the show and make sure that you implement those in the next 72 hours. Hey, and while you're at it, make sure you click the links and the resources below this episode to claim free growth resources to help you build the business you desire and deserve. I'll see you on the next episode.